Welcome back to DS Trucks. In today's video, I want to talk about a horror story from the past. We've all had horror stories, and I just think it'd be fun to tell some of these stories from time to time. So, this one's going to be a horror story from me working on a car, guys. I used to be a mobile mechanic. I don't know if you can tell by watching the channel that, hey, yeah, I do have, I'm mechanically inclined. Am I a mechanic today? No, I'm not. Like Power Stroke Tech Talk with A Rod or like Matt from the podcast. I don't work on cars every day, but if you follow the channel, I do know my way around a car a little bit. If you've seen, I put the running boards on the 450. That was custom. Really, guys, I do have a background in working on cars. I went to college for automotive repair. I've done a lot of automotive stuff, and I used to be a mobile mechanic, guys. I used to put tools in my trunk and go around and fix people's cars. I've been certified through the state for pretty much, everything. I think I was master state certified. I used to really be into working on cars. Along the way, I changed paths, but I'm still pretty well mechanically inclined. But I do remember back in the day being terrible at working on cars, but still thinking I was the best and thinking I was so great, and I couldn't do nothing wrong. Hold on, I'm gonna turn on my fan. But yeah, thinking that I was so great and can't do nothing wrong, and I could fix anything, and that's really how I felt. And I think honestly I wasn't taking the right approach. Look at this crazy weather out here. It's just raining all day. I realize now that I wasn't taking the right approach. I didn't have any guidance, and that really could have helped me out if I had some guidance, if I had, because ultimately I ended up kind of thinking that the automotive field wasn't a good field and there wasn't money in it, and it was not true. I didn't have good guidance. I had a lot of low dollar clients who didn't really take care of me financially, and I just wasn't going after the right kind of clientele. I wasn't approaching the field correctly, and that was my downfall in the field, and I ultimately decided to get out of the field. So definitely nothing really wrong with the automotive field. It was just me. I couldn't get a job at it. It was around 2008 where nobody was really hiring. There was a job shortage, and I just couldn't get an automotive repair job around that time when I was working on cars. But I want to tell a horror story of me working on a car. Guys, this is a bad one. So it was a friend's car, and my friend liked to save money, so he hired me to do all the work on his car. He had a 1998 Honda Civic, and I messed up pretty bad. So what happened is he ended up losing compression in one of his cylinders, and it was missing. So he ran on 3 cylinders. He had a 4-cylinder, but it ran on 3 cylinders for the longest time. It just missed, and he just kept going all over the place, driving all over the state, going visiting different colleges at the time when he was younger and going to college parties and stuff like that. So he would go around visiting college parties all over Michigan and running on 3 cylinders. So finally he decides that, all right, I'm going to fix this. So I had to diagnose it. I went ahead and did a compression check, wet compression check versus a regular compression check, and determined that you probably got something wrong with your valve because you don't have compression no matter what. So, we figured out it's probably a exhaust valve or something like that or whatever. So what's probably going to happen is you're going to pull off the head and get the head sent out and need a new head, whatever. So I was able to diagnose the car pretty well. It was burnt out or cracked or whatever exhaust valve. And I took it apart. He ordered a new head, and I went ahead to go ahead and put the head on the car. But the time when I was putting the head on the car, his dad was like looking over my shoulder, making sure I didn't mess up the project. And I'm thinking like, man, I think I know what to do. He was like watching me torque the heads. He's looking at how much oil I'm putting on the bolts for the head bolts. I think one of the head bolts made a noise when I went to tighten it up, And he's like, "Oh, you got to redo it. You got to redo it. It made a noise." And he's right. I mean, it did say you don't want to hear you want to put enough oil on the bolts. I put like not enough oil. He did say you want to put enough, or the book said you want to put enough oil, and if you hear a squeak, you got to redo it and all that. And I think I tightened a couple of the head studs or bolts. It was bolts, and one of the head bolts made a squeak. He's like, "Oh, redo it." So I get everything on. I get everything kind of together, and I wanted to put the coolant in the engine. And his dad said, "No, you probably didn't put the head on right. So if you put the coolant in and it leaks, then you just wasted all that coolant, and you're going to be wasting coolant. So we can't have you wasting coolant." So I had to wait. I wanted to put the coolant in to see if it leaked anyway. But apparently that was going to be wasting coolant. So I ended up getting sick. I ended up getting a real bad cold or flu, and I had a fever and all this stuff. It was winter time, and I was working outside, and I just got really sick, just really out of it. And I had a sore throat, fever, cough, chills, all that stuff. And it was like, it really affected me. I get everything back together, and the car won't start. So I got a friend who's without a car. I'm sick. I can't figure out why it won't start. Did I time it wrong? And his dad's like, "Oh, you probably put the timing belt on wrong. Oh, you put the timing belt on wrong." I had to take it all apart. I did the timing belt again. Everything was right. I couldn't figure it out. What ended up happening is I put the spark plug wires in the wrong spots. And I was looking at the image in the manual, and I had the image like flipped over in my head, probably because I was sick and I wasn't thinking clear. But I had the image flipped over in my head, and I got one plugged into 4 and 2 plugged into 3, and it was all messed up, not plugged into the right order. So I went ahead and figured it out, but nobody was there. It was just me. And I started it up, and I'm the feeling of 3 days it won't start. Finally it fires up and it runs so good. I mean, I had the valve lash adjusted just right. It was an old Honda, so I still had valve lash adjusters. I took the feeler gauge and set everything just right. I mean, it was just running good. I'm just listening to it run, hearing it hum. I'm walking around the car. I'm looking at it for leaks. It's not leaking coolant, not leaking oil, not leaking nothing. It's just running good. I'm walking around the car. I look inside at the cluster. Guys, the heat on that engine was so high. I've never seen a vehicle so far into the red. It was so hot. But it wasn't smoking. It wasn't doing nothing. There was no coolant in the engine at all to smoke, because I wasn't to put coolant in it until I figured out. I didn't remember that. I've been sick with the flu. I've been trying to get it started. I would have put the coolant in it, but I was, upper management had me not putting the coolant in the engine. So I turned it off. I didn't really know what to do. At the temperatures that engine was, what can you do? You can't pour cold water in it. That might not be good. You can't, guys, that engine was so hot. It was unreal. So the engine cooled off. I put the coolant in the engine. Nobody knew nothing. I mean, it never even smoked. It never boiled. It never did anything. It never burnt anything. But after doing this to this engine, having it overheat like this, it was so, look at this rain. Jeez, guys. After burning out, overheating like that, it burned so much. That car burned so much oil. It just left a black stain on the bumper, and he continued to drive it. Had a brand new head. It ran good until all that oil consumption just ate up the engine. Like, it killed all the valves. And then what happened is he ended up catching on that something wasn't right. So he had me redo everything again. He comes over to my house. At this time, I got sick with something else. I think I had like the stomach flu or something. I don't know. But I was still sick. But I felt horrible that this car is messed up. So he ended up getting the company to warranty the head. And he got a brand new cylinder head. And I took off the head and I looked inside the engine. And it was smoked. At first, when I looked inside the engine, it looked relatively clean. I think the car had like 200,000 miles, but it was a Honda. The engine looked relatively clean when I first took the head off. The second time, after getting overheated like that, that engine looked horrible, guys. That engine looked horrible. And the pistons were like a hot dog in a hallway. Every piston was like a hot dog down the hallway. And they were just wobbling in the cylinders. How that engine ran, I don't know. Must be a Honda thing, but it ran. And then I went, the head was so warped, the block was warped, oil was seeping out of the side of the head, but we put another head on it. I never really told him what happened either, but we put another head on it, and it burned oil. And he drove that car, guys. He drove that car for another year. He gave it to his sister. She drove it for a couple more years. Someone hit it. She still kept driving it for a couple more years. Finally, I think they just junked it, but what a crazy situation, and feeling horrible. Like, man, I'm so sorry that I messed up your car. Like, I never really told him about that situation where it ran and overheated, but yeah, he never knew why all of a sudden his car burned all this oil after getting fixed. But that's just it's just a horror story, guys. It's just a horror story. Married to a car, keeps coming back. And when I was working on it the second time, I was under so much stress. I started up the engine with no oil filter, and guys, when I tell you, when you start an engine without an oil filter, it's a mess, guys. An oil pump can pump all the oil out of the engine in seconds. So, and all of it came out. It was just black, smoked out oil. So we got an oil change out of the deal too. So, no, I wasn't the best mechanic. I was learning. I was young. I was 18. Doing cylinder heads with no guidance. But eventually, guys, I guess I figured it out a little bit. I can do that kind of stuff now if I wanted to. But, I'm definitely a little bit better now. That was very early on. I did a lot of stuff after that. A lot more horror stories working on cars. But if you like this video, guys, do me a favor. Let me know in the comment section that you liked it. If you thought it was funny, comment below. Tell me if you thought it was funny. My name is Sean. This is DS Trucks. If you look back there, you can see I got my F-250 parked, and I got an F-450. But, yeah, comment below. Tell me what you think. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. See you in the next one. Over and out. Bye.